It was a stormy night, the kind where rain pounds the pavement with relentless fury and darkness swallows every street lamp. I was driving home after a long, draining day when my car abruptly sputtered and died on a desolate stretch of road. With no cell reception and the highway miles away, I had no choice but to seek shelter in the nearest structure, a decrepit house perched on the edge of a steep cliff, looming like a specter in the tempest. The moment I stepped through the sagging front door, it creaked behind me with a finality that sent a shiver racing down my spine. The interior was a time capsule of decay, moldy drapes, dusty furniture, and a pervasive odor of damp rot and old secrets. In the grand foyer, I was greeted by a row of faded portraits whose eyes, though painted, seemed to follow me with unnerving intensity. The silence was absolute, broken only by the persistent sound of rain battering the windows and the occasional drip of water echoing from unseen corners. At first, I rationalized that the oddities, the doors that would creak open by themselves, the inexplicable drafts of cold air, and the shifting shadows that flitted at the edge of my vision, were simply the byproducts of an old house settling. But as I wandered deeper into its labyrinthine halls, it became impossible to dismiss the sense of being constantly watched. The atmosphere was charged with a presence I couldn't ignore. A force that seemed to seep into my bones. My exploration led me to a narrow hallway lined with closed doors. I noticed that each door bore a peculiar symbol, an abstract design that evoked ancient, unknowable rites. One door in particular drew me in. From behind it wafted a soft, almost inaudible lullaby, a melody both soothing and laced with sorrow. My hand hesitated on the doorknob, and when I finally pushed it open, the lullaby ceased abruptly. Inside, the room was empty except for an antique rocking chair gently swaying as if moved by an invisible hand. In the far corner, I detected a faint figure, a little girl with vacant, hollow eyes. She stood perfectly still, her expression one of desperate melancholy. "Help me," she whispered, and her voice, fragile as it was, pierced the oppressive silence. I froze, torn between the instinct to flee and the overwhelming compulsion to help. In that moment, I realized that the house was not merely abandoned, it was a vessel for broken souls, trapped in time and tethered by unresolved grief. My heart hammered in my chest as I stumbled out of the room, only to find that the corridors had shifted. Every passage I took led to yet more evidence of the house's tragic past, rooms filled with disfigured, spectral figures caught in eternal torment, their silent screams etched into the very fabric of the walls. Panic seized me as I raced down the hall, desperate to escape the relentless, unseen forces that pursued me. The front door, which I had entered through, was nowhere to be found. Instead, I was met with a cold, unyielding stone wall that closed off my only exit. I retreated into the basement, hoping that the ancient structure concealed a hidden way out. The basement was a disorienting maze of corridors and storage rooms, lit only by the erratic beam of my flashlight. Damp walls and the scuttling of unseen creatures intensified my mounting dread. In the farthest recess of this subterranean labyrinth, I discovered an old wooden door carved with strange symbols that pulsed in the dim light. A memory stirred in my mind, something I'd read in one of the scattered journals about a ritual that might free the tormented souls and break the house's hold on the living. With my hands shaking uncontrollably, I pushed the door open. Beyond lay a narrow passage that descended into a vast, cavernous chamber. The air was thick with the musty odor of decay and an energy that was almost palpable. At the center of the chamber stood an altar, covered in cryptic inscriptions and surrounded by remnants of long-forgotten rites. I could almost hear whispers rising from the very stones, as if the chamber itself was chanting an incantation from another time. In that charged silence, I recited a passage from the journal, a plea for deliverance from the curse that had ensnared this accursed place. The ground trembled beneath me, and the symbols on the altar began to glow with an otherworldly light. For what seemed like an eternity, I was caught in a vortex of sound and light, a clash of spectral energies that filled the chamber with the voices of those who had suffered here for too long. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the tremors ceased. The oppressive weight that had hung over the house seemed to lift, replaced by a fragile calm. I made my way back through the twisting corridors until, by some miracle, I found myself once again at what appeared to be the front door. It now stood invitingly open, as though offering passage back into the world of the living. I left that house on the edge that dawn, forever marked by the night's horrors. Even now, the memory of those hollow eyes, the echo of that forlorn lullaby, and the despair of countless trapped souls haunt me. I know the house still stands, waiting in the shadows for its next unsuspecting visitor, a silent sentinel on the edge of oblivion. And in quiet moments before sleep, I sometimes hear the distant strains of a lullaby and the faintest whisper, a reminder that some doors, once opened, can never be completely closed. I've always been a night driver. There's something about the open road under a pitch-black sky that soothes me, the way the world feels empty, like I'm the last person alive. It's peaceful, until it isn't. Last month, I took a long drive down a desolate highway stretching between two towns. The kind of road that rarely sees traffic after sundown. It was just me, the hum of my engine, and the rhythmic flicker of my headlights cutting through the darkness. Somewhere past midnight, the rain started. A soft drizzle at first, then heavy sheets that blurred my windshield. I flicked on my wipers, but the visibility was terrible. That's when I saw her, a woman, standing alone by the side of the road. Drenched and motionless. Normally, I wouldn't stop for a stranger this late, but something about her was unsettling. She wasn't waving for help, wasn't holding out a thumb. Just standing there. Head tilted slightly, her soaked dress clinging to her frame. I slowed down, hesitating, then, without me deciding, my hands turned the wheel. My foot eased onto the brake. Before I knew it, I was pulling up beside her. She didn't move. I rolled down my window, rain splattering onto my arm. "Hey. Do you need a ride?" She nodded once, slow and deliberate, before walking around the car. The passenger door creaked open, and she slid in without a word. She smelled of wet leaves and something else, something faintly metallic. Like rust, I swallowed hard. "Where are you headed?" She didn't answer, just stared straight ahead. Her long, dark hair hung limp over her shoulders, her pale hands folded neatly in her lap. The silence stretched, the rain drummed harder against the roof, drowning out my nerves. Maybe she was in shock. Lost? I turned back to the road and started driving. "You from around here?" I tried again, hoping to break the eerie quiet. Nothing. I focused on the road, my hands tightening on the wheel. Something about her presence unsettled me, like she wasn't fully there. I stole a quick glance at her. She was completely still, except, her lips moved, no sound, just a faint motion. Whispering something under her breath, a cold shiver ran down my spine. I turned the music up slightly to shake off the tension. The soft hum of an old rock station filled the car, but I couldn't ignore the sensation creeping over me. Like I'd made a terrible mistake. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her shift. She turned her head, just a fraction. Enough for me to see her mouth open wider, still no sound, just that silent whispering. My pulse spiked. I forced myself to keep driving, watching the road, not her. But the temperature in the car had dropped. My breath came out in faint wisps, even though the heater was on. That's when I glanced at the rearview mirror, and my stomach twisted into a knot. Her reflection wasn't there. I slammed the brakes, the tires screeched against the wet road, my heart hammering in my chest. The car skidded to a stop, throwing my breath against the steering wheel. I turned, my fingers trembling. The seat was empty, the door never opened. The seatbelt was still fastened, she was just gone. My chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven breaths. My hands were numb against the wheel, my skin clammy with fear. I tried to tell myself I imagined it, that I had been driving too long, that exhaustion was playing tricks on me, but then I saw it, a single, wet handprint smeared on the inside of the window. I didn't stay to question it. I threw the car into drive and sped down the empty road, refusing to look in the mirror again. I don't drive at night anymore.
Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. And hey, share it with your friends, it really helps the channel grow. Thanks for your support, and I'll see you in the next one.